Hi and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. This is a B-movie review and I'll be having a look at the movie Vampire Apocalypse, also known as Bitten. So before I get into the actual review, I want to talk about the titles here because the first title, which I believe is the one for the UK, Vampire Apocalypse, is a little bit misleading to what this film actually is. Now I'm not saying it's a bad film because of this, but just so you understand that the title Vampire Apocalypse doesn't really have anything to do with what the actual film is about. Yes, it's a vampire film, but there's no real apocalypse. It's a very small scale story, very personal story, primarily set in an apartment, and there's no apocalypse. So forget that. And also the cover of the actual one makes it kind of look like a bit like Underworld, and again it really isn't like that. So what is the film like? Well, it stars Jason Mewes and Erica Cox, and Jason Mewes is a paramedic. You may know Jason Mewes from Jay and Silent Bob. Now, he plays, as I say, a paramedic, and he's kind of on the graveyard shift, and he's sort of just split up with his last girlfriend, and he's kind of worried because of the hours that he works, and he has a pretty unsociable job where he's kind of seeing the sort of dregs of humanity. He's never going to meet anyone else. One day, he comes back home after his shift, and he sees what looks like a body in some rubbish sort of outside his apartment building, and it turns out to be this young girl. And she looks like she's covered in blood, she looks like she's hurt, and she kind of doesn't want to be taken to hospital, and there's a kind of load of drug dealers outside, so he kind of ends up taking her back to his apartment and sort of cleaning her up. And it is this girl called Danica, played by Erica Cox. And you kind of realise something's not quite right pretty much straight away. Nevertheless, he sort of takes care of her, and as you would expect in this kind of thing, a kind of relationship starts to build. Now, the other thing with it, this film is really about relationships. So it's the relationship between, primarily I guess, between Jason Mewes' character Jack and his girlfriend Danica, who ends up being a vampire, who eventually Jack kind of figures out, and is kind of complicit with her, and actually to a degree actually helps her kind of get victims to try and feed her. Now it appears that she's only just become a vampire. We're not really told any kind of backstory about how that's actually happened, but we get the impression that she's only just turned, and only really just sort of finding it out for herself, and ultimately it's a case of having to sort of try and find victims to sustain her. But at the same time, looking at kind of their relationship, and really it's a metaphor for kind of being in a bad relationship, and also a metaphor for perhaps being on drug use and being in a relationship with someone for kind of with sort of drug use, and how that would how that would be. But obviously using the kind of the vampire metaphor, but it's also about the relationship between friendship. And Jack's got a kind of a strong friendship with a guy at work called Roger, who is an older guy, and he's kind of this quite amusing sort of perverted sort of older bloke who's constantly sort of on the toilet. But they have a really strong bond, and the chemistry on screen with those two I think was really, really good. I mean, I've not seen the guy who plays Roger in anything else, I don't think, but he had a great relationship with Jason Mewes' character, and I really enjoyed that. And they kind of have a real kind of, you get the sense that they have a real sort of genuine sort of friendship in this film. Now, if you're kind of worried about sort of seeing Jason Mewes in kind of anything other than the kind of the Jay and Silent Bob films, he kind of plays a little bit against what he's played in the past. Obviously, he normally plays like stoners or drug dealers and what have you, and he kind of still has that kind of lowbrow sort of gross humour, but it's a little bit more restrained, a little bit more sensitive, not all the way, but it does sort of show he does have a little bit of range in his sort of acting ability. And as I said, the film is really about the relationships, and it's really kind of Roger and Jack's relationship, and Roger trying to sort of help his friend and kind of get him to realise that if you're in a bad relationship, because obviously he doesn't know that she's actually a vampire, what they can do about it. So it's really, I guess, a relationship between those sort of three sort of central people. And that's kind of, this is what I mean, it's kind of a small scale film. There's no way a vampire apocalypse. There is a reasonable amount of kind of blood in it. It isn't particularly an explicit film in regards to gore, but there's a fair amount of like neck munching and sort of blood spurting anywhere. There is actually quite a fair amount of nudity as well. The actress who plays Danica, I think her name is Erica Cox, really stunning looking actress, and she's knew pretty much 50% of this film, so that's a bonus on that one. There's also quite a lot of quite a lot of sex scenes, quite a lot of sort of sensual things going on, and she looks very nice throughout the whole film, I have to say. The humour is not going to be for everyone. It's very much in the style of what Jason Mewes has done in the past. So lots of like dick and fart jokes and poo jokes and things like that. So that isn't going to be for everyone. And I said the story isn't a huge sprawling story. It's a very, very small story. It's obviously a low budget film, but I have to say, for the budget that they've got, they did it right, I think, and kind of didn't try to do anything that the budget wouldn't sort of stretch to, if that makes sense. So I actually think it was pretty good. All the effects I thought were fine. All the kind of the blood effects, the kind of the vampire effects, they're not overly extenuated. So she kind of, she has fangs, but not huge fangs. She's kind of got these like contacts on the whole time. So the effects I think serve the story, and they were pretty decent. It's not going to be for everyone's taste, because I say the humour is going to be a dividing point here, and it certainly maybe isn't the most complex plot in the world. But overall, I actually thought it was quite an enjoyable film. There's some quite funny, quotable lines in here as well. But again, that's going to sort of depend on your humour. So overall, I'm going to give this one a 7 out of 10. I actually quite enjoyed it. I thought it was a good film. I actually enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. But just don't get on the impression it's going to be some kind of vampire war or whatever, because that's what the cover looks like. So 7 out of 10 for me. Leave me a comment. What did you think of it? I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.